No, that is such an interesting subject.
Yeah.
It's really nice to hear you say that you love your work though, because a friend of mine is one of the most successful illustrators in India, and she's one of my best friends. We talk every single day. And she laughs when I tell her that I've written this new thing that I really love. And she goes like, "Oh, you're so crazy. Like I don't love any of my work. Like I can't
Wow.
believe that you say you love your own work. That's so weird to me." Because she puts her stuff out in the world and other people love it, but she never feels great love for her own work. And then that's crazy to me. How could you not? Aren't you making something that you love? But I guess not. Not everybody does.
Well, does she look at it now? She doesn't dislike her work, right? It's a job for her. Isn't that what it is? It's a craft. Like she knows what she has to do and she's satisfied with her work, but she doesn't love it.
Well, in her case, her illustrations are very, very personal. Well, I'll just say her name. It's Alicia Souza,
Okay.
Alicia, Alicia Souza.
Yeah.
So look her up on Instagram. She's a big hit, and her work is very personal. It's very much her and her husband and her kid and her life. Um, she's illustrating her life, and
Uh-huh.
people love it. So
Oh, so
maybe
this
that's
is
why
personal stuff.
it's very personal. But maybe it's kind of like we don't all wake up and go, "Oh, I love myself." You know, maybe it's just like maybe it's almost too personal. It's like she's just showing herself, including, warts and okay, actually not warts, but she does have things about like little illustrations of, farting in the morning or something like that,
Yeah.
and her foibles, and that's part of the charm that people love about her illustrations is she's showing a whole picture of herself. So yeah, maybe it wouldn't be really sensible for her to love it like you love your music or I love the things I write.
Well, there's a dark side to my loving my music, and that is
Uh,
that for a long time, for decades, I had no sense of self at all, really. I was hollow inside. And so the only way I could really love myself was to produce something beautiful and love that. And so, I mean, that's not the case anymore. I mean, I have done enough work that I feel like I have an inside now and that I do love myself. And it's changed the way I work. It's allowed more collaboration, for instance, that we were talking about. But really, it was very important for me um, to create stuff and work hard on it and get it as good as I could because that was going to be something I could look at. You forget about selling it, just something I could read. This is the novel I spent 17 years on because
hmm.
it's got to be perfect so that I can read it and know that I'm a worthwhile human being. So that's the dark side of that.
Hmm. Did you feel so at the time, or is that just
Did
a
I
tale to tell
know?
looking back?
No, no, I think I knew it. Um,
Okay.
I mean, to some extent. I mean, I don't know if I could have articulated it as clearly. I think I probably was aware that there was I know for a fact that at least in my 30s and 40s I knew there was a hole inside of me, and that
Huh.
the creativity was a way of healing that hole, or at least you know giving me something about myself to love. What's interesting that I didn't know about my creativity was it was also guiding me towards the path of healing. Like I was sending myself messages through my work. And
Hmm.
maybe the love was the sugar coated pill to get it in there. Like you need to keep reading your stuff, Adam, because you're trying to tell yourself something. You're trying to tell.
Oh, you mean actually like literally, like were you actually
Yes,
writing things that your future self needed to hear?
yes, yes,
Interesting.
yes. And it's only recently as I've finally come to realize those things that I'm like, oh yeah, all my creative stuff was about that. I was trying to tell myself that all this time, but I didn't
Huh.
understand it.
I wonder how many of us do that. Like I just read yesterday that um Billie Eilish just I think she won an award for her song for the Barbie movie.
Ah, yeah.
And it was a couple years ago they came to her and said, "We want you to write a song for the Barbie movie." And she did. And she just did it writing for Barbie. Her like the lyrics were something like "I'm a doll and you dress me the way you need me to be." And she said, "I was just completely that had nothing to do with me. I was writing the song from Barbie's voice." She said, "But now 2 years later, I'm like, oh my God, that was that was me. I was writing about myself. I just didn't
Yeah.
realize it until 2 years later."
Yeah. So you've been blogging for 25, 30 years and your blogs are very concise and polished. What do you have you been talking to yourself all this time?
Oh, that's just an aesthetic I love. That is, any of us who have read a nonfiction book know the annoying feeling where you're reading a 300-page book that really should have been just 20 pages. And you're just like, ugh, come on, enough with the examples. Yeah, I get it. Come on, keep it going. And you're done with the book and you're like, it was all right, but it was so much fluff. Couldn't you just so or okay, we've all heard the quip, sorry to write you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It
yeah.
takes more work to make something short. So I just decided long ago, I'm doing the work to make it short.
Well,
Uh, I write for hours a day in my diary with no filter at all.
yeah.
I do a ton of journaling to myself, but when I'm going to put something out into the public, I'm doing the extra work to make it short. So, yeah, audience, the average length of a chapter in my new book, the one that Adam was just the second person to see, uh, the average chapter is 20 sentences,
Yeah, no, it
and
reads
I
very well. Yeah.
I craft the fuck out of those sentences like Smokey Robinson. I chisel those fuckers down so tight, um, over and over and over again. Yeah, I mean, the rough draft is always 5 times longer, and I just chisel it down to like there's not a single word that doesn't need to be there. And then I feel like I've made something beautiful. So maybe it's just like I'm like a minimalist composer, right? Like this is the art form I like putting out into the world. Obviously, when we're talking like this, I'm not so damn succinct.
No, that's fine. The aesthetic that I mentioned was really just incidental. I was more asking when you present your. It's not that you're concise, but that you. And this may you may find this it'll sound insulting, but you sound like you have all the answers when you blog. And the
Ah,
question I'm wondering is, like I mean, I like that because your answers are great. I enjoy them, and you're not arrogant. I mean, you clearly come across as a learning person, but there's a all that journaling must be where the struggle comes in. There's no hint of
yeah.
struggle in your writing, and I'm
Ah,
wondering, what are you getting at? What have you been getting at in these 30 years? Has this benefited you at all to do this, or is
oh
it?
yeah.
And is it only benefiting you in your mind and anything else is incidental? Like, I'm glad you're getting something out of it,
Hmm.
but I'm doing it for me. What have you been doing this for?
Hmm. It is first for me. Um, we have the phrase "in a nutshell," and we say "in a nutshell" when we're about to summarize something. But it's a nice metaphor because an actual like walnut shell is really easy to carry in your pocket. And when it's hollow and you could put a little thing in there, it's a really good way to carry something small around. And I think of the work I do to craft these ideas down to a nutshell makes them easy to carry. And I want these ideas
Uh,
to stick in your head and travel. If I were to be too verbose, well, I was thinking this, but then I thought to myself, that's not right, is it? If I was to give the long verbose version, it wouldn't fit in your pocket. So I want to make these ideas uh, communicate. I want them to be catchy. I'm trying to write a catchy book.
yeah, like a catchy tune.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
know that there's a craft that you do to craft a melody so that it's not meandering, so that it's like that is a well-structured melody that's like, damn, that's catchy because it was crafted to be catchy. It wasn't just a blathering of words that came to mind. It was a really memorable shape to those notes. Um, and I try to do that with my words too, to make them memorable and catchy.
yeah. Well, they clearly resonate with people. I've always been astounded by the number of replies you get to the things you send. Jealous is probably not too strong a word. I mean, just I tried for many years to do what you did and blog regularly. For 10 years, I blogged.
Okay.
And I was lucky if I got maybe one response every 5
Mm.
months. And I would look at you and they'd be like, yeah, Derek, wow, Derek, oh, cool, this is what I think, Derek, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what I wouldn't do for some of that
Aw.
feedback. I'm just, yeah, yeah, you can feel sorry for him if you want to. But I was just, I really wanted to reach people like that. And maybe I
Hmm.
missed the essential, which was the nutshell. Perhaps, Like, I'm still proud of those blogs. I put all the blogs into a book. I was like, yeah, these are good, and I liked
Hmm.
them. But again, it's the phenomenon thing. It's like I'm saying these things, and I'm working hard to say them well. Are they reaching anyone?
Right.
You know, what happens next? You know,
Hmm.
and the fact that people will respond to you, that's the magic. That's your magic. And I've long contemplated it.
I wonder, so an old girlfriend of mine, like from when I was 19, we were together for a few years, and she got back in touch after like, I don't know, 6 years of not talking. And one of the first things she said is, she said, "Do you remember when I asked you if you would make music if you were the last person on Earth?" And I said, "No." She goes, "You don't remember this?" I said, "No." She goes, "Wow, okay, well, let me ask you now. Would you make music if you were the last person on Earth?" I said, "Oh, fuck yeah." I said, "I'd have all the time in the world. I'd have no obligations. I would just sit there and make music all day." And she goes, "That's unbelievable to me. How could you say that?" And I said, "What? What are you talking about? Like, to me, it's a no-brainer. No people on Earth, a bunch of instruments? Hell yeah, I'd sit here and play." And she goes, "No, I can't fathom how you could even think that way." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "The only reason I make music is for other people. If there were no people, there would be no reason to make." Whoops. Hold on, my headphone just popped out. Um, I was gesturing too much. She said, "If there were no other people, I'd have no reason to make music." I went, "Oh, no. Ultimately, everything I do is for me first. And if other people like it, great."
Yeah.
And she said, "Everything I do is for other people first. And it doesn't matter what I think." I went, "Oh, interesting." So it's just a different approach to. Oh, so apparently in the 6 years that we hadn't talked, she'd been going around telling all of her friends and getting into this conversation many times with fellow musicians about this ex that she had named Derek that said that he would make music if he was the last person on Earth. And how weird is that? And everybody said, "Yeah, that's completely weird. I can't even imagine that." And so she found a bunch of people that agreed with her and apparently thought I was the weirdo for doing it this way. But
Well,
I,
I
yeah.
understand why she said that, but I also understand where you're coming from. I don't know what I would do, because, like I said, you already heard me talk about my feedback loop. Like, I would be making
Hmm.
music to as a way of bouncing off the wall, so I could hear myself and see myself, because it's difficult for me.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't particularly like to play unless I'm preparing for a performance. I don't like some
Uh,
people I know will sit in front of a piano and just jam and play jazz or all that. I'm a highly studied jazz musician. I know how to do lots
hmm.
of things on the piano, but I will not sit and play. I don't enjoy just sitting and playing and listening to myself. I did for a little while when I was maybe 18, 19, but after a while it just
Hmm.
was I I don't do that anymore. On the other hand, I will compose, you know.
Okay. That's
But
different because I was going to say, don't you want to explore ideas? Don't you ever say like, what would it be like if I
well,
combine this with that?
what happens to me is usually I'll either get an idea or a dream of some kind, a seed of some kind. And then it becomes a problem for me to solve. And that's what's
Yes.
interesting for me.
So well put. Thank you for
Yeah.
saying that.
Well, but I learned that my primary way of thinking is problem solving. And so for me to write a piece of music is to pose a problem to myself in music and to solve that problem in the piece of music. So
Nice.
yeah. And that's what gets me going. That's what gets me finishing a piece. Like I've got to solve this problem. This piece has got to hold together. It's got to satisfy me. And hopefully I'll be thinking the way other people are thinking, and it's got to satisfy them. And as I've gotten better, I think I've gotten better at writing pieces that do satisfy other people. In the beginning, I was solving problems and I was satisfied, but they weren't listenable because they were just, satisfying
Hmm.
to me. As the craft has improved, I've been thinking more about now the problem has expanded to what will other people think of this, and that's fun. It's fun.
Where do you live?
Atlanta, Georgia,
How long have you been there?
my whole life.
Okay. Um, why don't you have a Southern accent?
Well, I mean, the truth is that Atlanta has, as long as I've been around, um, and I'm 55 and I've been here, the Atlanta accent has always been washed out. It's been sort of a
Uh,
neutral accent. There
okay.
are people in Atlanta with thicker accents, but the further out you go, the more they are pronounced. It's a metropolitan area. That's why.
Okay. Um, well, I grew up in Chicago where people really did talk like this, and I didn't even realize it until I left. And then I go back and I hear people from where I grew up, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I wonder if I ever talked like that. Um, and I think that was in the city too. Anyway, what's my point? Oh, that the the act of seeing yourself through strangers' eyes. I think doing it in life is related to doing it in our art,
Hmm.
right? Like my distracting metaphor I used of AI a few days ago. Like, oops, I'm really glad I saw myself through others' eyes because in my eyes, that was a beautiful metaphor. In
Yeah.
everybody else's eyes, it was too distracting. There might be something you're doing musically that's like, all right, yeah, you and I are very trained musicians. Like, you understand what's going on harmonically here and why it's badass. To somebody else, they could just go like, huh, it's kind of noisy. They
Yeah,
don't know.
absolutely.
Um, Gary Burton, the vibraphonist Gary
Mhm.
Burton.
Sure.
Uh, while I was at Berkeley, he said to most people, listening to music is like a cat in the window watching cars go by. He said, we're like mechanics. We see a car go by and we're like, oh, that's a V6 engine. That's what something, something. That's a
Right.
new hybrid. He said, for a cat, they just go like, yeah, that one's blue. Wow, that one's loud. Yeah, that one was fast.
Yeah.
That's all. That's what music is for most people.
Hmm.
Cars going by.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
I'm in the Chili's, and I'm listening to the music that's playing over the, that's like, oh yeah, that was a hit in 1973, and people are like, we're not talking about that. What's wrong with you?
yeah. Once you're too trained as a musician, there's no such thing as background music.
Right.
Everything that's on in the background, I'm analyzing it harmonically. I'm
Yeah.
thinking that, oh, whoa, they just changed key there. Interesting choice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, I see what they're doing production wise here. Interesting. Rolling the treble off the hi-hat to get the
Right.
something.
Right.
All
Right.
right. Reverb
Yeah.
on the snare, but not the kick. Huh. And people are having a conversation about, what they did yesterday, and I'm lost because there's fucking background music on. Yeah.
Right. No
Yeah.
such thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. You might find this interesting. Um, I, having gotten to a place in my life where I feel relatively whole and sane and healthy, I am now leaving the inside and going out. And I'm working specifically on money things. And that is in particular, like, I'm now trying to think about how people think about what I'm saying and doing, but the art isn't there. It's purely marketing. Marketing is like music without the music. I'm seeing myself through other people's eyes, but I don't get art to do it. You know,
Mm.
it's an interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but now that we talk, this is how I'm thinking about it. It's like, this is really what I have to do. This is my marketing struggle. I am seeing myself through other people's eyes, just like I did with my art, but I don't get the
Hmm.
art. And
Right.
that's perhaps where the struggle has been all this time.
Yeah. I It's so hard to put yourself into the frame of mind of a cat in the window.
Yeah,
Or to me, when I moved to Singapore for 2.5 years, I initially got there thinking that everyone was wrong, that uh they'd say things like, "Oh, I wanted to do music, but my parents said I had to be an engineer, so I'm an engineer." I'm like, "No, you have to follow your dreams. That's wrong." And it took me a while to realize that no, that's I'm coming at that from a very American point of view, in which my value system says that's wrong. But my value system is not correct. It's just off on the far edge of things.
yeah,
The Singaporean mind view is also correct. And it took me a long time to see that. And then, yeah, I think it continues to be hard to wonder what I must seem like to other people. Well, even just as a person, let alone like my writing, but even just like me, how the hell do I come across to other people? I have no idea. It's
yeah.
weird.
Well, I've been trying to tell you. I mean, gosh, you come across kind of Buddha-like in some sense,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that's what you want. I mean, that's how you present yourself in a way.
Okay.
Um, it's not arrogant, but it is somebody who knows stuff, has illuminations and wants to share them. So, I mean, it really
Okay.
does have a sense of you sitting on a hill sharing things.
Okay.
That's how I see you in a way. I mean, it's, you
Which
know, and I'm that must be very odd for you to hear, but I mean, we're talking about 25 years of me experiencing you this way, reading your blogs,
right.
thinking about that Derek guy who he answers my emails. Does he know me? I have no idea, but he always answers my emails. It's like you pray to somebody and he answers your emails.
I mean, I guess it's not okay. The sitting on the hill, like I've got it all figured out thing, may not be dead on, but I guess what I am doing is like I spend hours and hours a day like in my journal. It's okay. Now that's a straight up fucking privilege. The fact that when I sold CD Baby, it took me, it wasn't until a visa border guy told me that I was retired that I had to realize I was retired. I was trying to enter the UK and I wasn't sure how long I was going to stay. You know, a few weeks, few months, I'm not sure yet. And he said, what do you do for a living? And I was just really ambiguous. I was like, well, this and that. I don't know. And I was like, come on, just stamp it. Let me in. And he finally said, all right, look, mate. He said, it sounds to me like you're coming here to take a job and you're being cagey about it. So unless you can prove to me that you're not coming here to take a job, I'm not going to let you in. I was like, all right, all right. It's embarrassing, but I sold my company for $22 million. You can search the web and see it's all out there. I said, I'm not coming to take a job. And he goes, oh, stamp, stamp. He said, why didn't you just admit you're retired? He said, from now on, just make it easy for everyone. Just admit you're retired.
And you were
Like,
how old?
whoa. Thank you, sir. Yeah, 36. I was like,
Right.
thank you, sir. I was like, oh, admit you're retired. Huh. So anyway, so yeah, that's a crazy stroke of luck. I won the lottery. And but because of that, um, I spend a ton of time just thinking about life and how it works and how we are and how this all works. And like, and then when I come up with something that I think is really helpful for me, then I try to communicate it in a way that other people could use it too. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe that does is like the guy on the mountaintop sharing the
That is how
wisdom.
it feels, but you're not the only one, of course. I mean, lots of
Hmm.
people are doing this.
Hmm.
How do I see you as different? Because I mean, these people are littered across the landscape. Some are
Yeah.
successful, some are just people who think they have something to say and they're terrible at it. So, but you usually I can't think of a time when what you said wasn't useful. It's
Cool.
always, yeah, it's useful. It's
That's
very,
great.
like I said, the conciseness of it is the nutshell. You know, it doesn't take long to read. You want to know what I think. That's fun. So it's good. I mean, yeah, I mean, you felt like a friend, really, all this time.
Good.
That's
Yeah.
nice. You
We've
know,
been emailing for a very long time.
We have. I wasn't sure to the
Mhm.
extent that you remembered that because you answer
Of
all of
course.
your emails. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you say of course, but
Yeah.
you answer thousands of emails a month, right? I
Not
mean,
as many as you'd think. I mean, it doesn't feel like that many to me. Also, it helps that at least for the last 12 years, I've been living in a very low stimulation environment. I live in New Zealand, which is like Vermont, you
yeah,
know? I'm very remote from the rest of the world. And so I love my email inbox. I love these human connections. There are more people in my inbox than there are in my neighborhood, you know?
yeah,
And
oh
I
yeah,
love that. This is my connection to the world. So I give it my full attention.
yeah. And you've always given my emails your full attention, which
Yeah.
is again very gratifying. I mean, I've asked you some serious questions over the years, and you have never shied away from them. One time you told me what you focus on is what gets bigger, and I'm still contemplating that.
Cool.
Uh,
Um, so way back near the beginning of the call, you said that you're working through some shit now.
yeah,
And I said, can we come back to that? And you said
yeah,
yes. So can you
sure.
tell me what
Well,
that
I
is?
started to. I mean, it's really the marketing thing. Um, you know,
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'm hugely prolific, freakishly prolific. Books and songs and essays and poems and blah blah. I mean, just when I die, nobody's going to want to come near my collected works because it's just too much. But I haven't made any money off of that stuff. Really, it's been a miserable experience trying to get it to people, and I have tried very hard. In terms of publishing books, doing the covers right, entering books in contests, putting songs. I have 9 or 10 albums out. Sharing them, making contacts with people, trying to sell songs. Joining Taxi. I mean, I've really tried, but there has been something missing always in my efforts. Perhaps it was I've been fortunate financially so that I've never been at a risk of starving ever. I've always had some money to live on and fall back on. So I've always been
Hmm.
somewhat secure. So that make it or break it thing has never been a part of my life. It's
Hmm.
coming to that point now where I really, my children and my debts are like knocking on my door saying, if you don't get your shit together, there's going to be a crisis. It's time. Figure out what's going on. So this is what I'm doing
Mm.
now. I am trying to
Okay.
learn how to sell myself, to sell what I do, to to have relationships with people where they pay me for my value. That's the
Mm.
best way to put it. I'm not asking them to give me money for nothing. I'm asking to be
Hmm.
paid for what I do, to be valued essentially. Is that
Wow.
interesting?
Okay.
Yeah.
That was wonderfully put. Thank you. Um, yeah, that's a huge challenge. It's the struggle of what's useful to others or what's valuable to others is not always what's valuable to us. So it's tough finding that intersection that some of what you create is for you. You want to create it, you like it, doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Yeah.
You love it. Then some of what you create is for others. And ideally, then it's tough finding that intersection of finding the stuff that you like to create that is
Yes.
worth somebody opening their wallet for.